NASCAR race weekend that saw some things that have never happened before to things that have happened quite a lot. To a Super 2 season debut that saw a Commodore ZB and a Mustang GT atop the podium. Some good old-fashioned short track racing in Las Vegas with some huge career news from one of those competitors. And finally, down to Texas, where a driver on two wheels was fighting the reigning world champion to try and earn his first career victory. This is episode 2 of Grid Rising. As always, I am one of the hosts of this program, Tanner Smith, editor of Pitbox Press, and with me, as always, is Matthew Bro of GridNetworkTV.com. Say hi to the folks, Matthew.
Howdy, y'all. Ready for episode 2, Tanner. Let's get after it.
Let's pull them belts tight and get going. So, a big thank you first and foremost to our Patreon investors. You can see them here on the side of the screen. Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and our newest investor, Nico. In addition to that, you could also send us a YouTube super chat or buy us a coffee. Jason M is currently topping the leaderboard with what appears to be 3. Hopefully my eyesight isn't that bad right now. I'm misreading that. But anyhow, we really appreciate anybody that sends us a contribution and anybody that gives any sort of viewership. So any contribution you can make to our program to make it better, we always appreciate it. Now, before we dive in, also make sure to follow the Grid Network across social media on gridnetworktv.com as well to read any of our articles, especially Matthew's most recent recap of the Cup Series race at Atlanta. Speaking of Atlanta, let's take a dive into the newly dubbed O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. So they went into Atlanta for the Bennett Transportation and Logistics 250 at EchoPark Speedway, formerly known as Atlanta, and how we're going to refer to it the rest of the way. And it'll be an event that we talk about for a very long time, because after a NASCAR record 15 runner-up finishes and 136 starts, Sheldon Creed is finally a winner in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Coming to the final few turns, it looked like it was going to be yet another Austin Hill win in his home state, but a battle quickly emerged between him and Ross Chastain, and Chastain unfortunately got into Hill and sent him spinning into turn 3, allowing Creed to dive beneath both of them and inherit the lead, beating everybody back to the line to take the checkered flag. Matthew, how do you feel about Sheldon Creed finally reaching the absolute zenith of the O'Reilly series by getting that first win?
Tanner, I have to be completely honest with you. I felt like I was in the car. It was just the relief to see Sheldon Creed finally get it done. I don't believe there is anyone more deserving in the sport to finally earn a victory than Sheldon Creed. I mean, like you said, 15 runner-up finishes. I mean, this is a Truck Series champion. We just forget about it because it was so damn long ago that he did that. So Creed's a hell of a race car driver. He proved that. Obviously, he has Stadium Trucks wins and championships, so on and so forth. Quarter midget wins from way back when. I mean, Creed is a great race car driver. Even Legend Car wins as well. So for him to finally win, in the way he did it too was kind of funny. His old teammate Austin Hill just kind of gets moved a little bit out of the way from Ross Chastain, trying to make a move to win the race. Creed might have helped him a little bit there, but yeah, for me, Tanner, it's just finally, right? I love to see Sheldon Creed succeed. And I mean, that's really, I think at the end of the day, that's all you got to keep saying is finally, right? And he had the most laps led, I think, ever, or maybe second most laps led ever by a driver who had not earned a win yet. And now I think that falls right back into Ryan Sieg. I was going to say Brian Scott, but I think he ended up winning at least one race, maybe before he inevitably won. I don't know, actually. We'll have to check that. Right. I don't even know. But yeah, to see what you got to say.
Yeah, well, yeah, to get back to the man of the hour, Sheldon Creed, he has found practically every way to lose in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Racing Series. And it is just so – it's just great when you see someone knock down that wall after chipping away at it for so long. Like, a lot of folks will, it's that meme where I'm lining away, and it's like he starts walking back, and there's like a sliver of dirt left, and he's about to reach all the diamonds. You just figure at a certain point that's what's going to happen to Sheldon, and he's going to end up dropping back down to the Truck Series where he found so much success. But he stuck with it, kept finding rides with really good teams like Haas Factory Team. And obviously, he did a little detour with Joe Gibbs Racing after being ousted from RCR at the end of 2023. So, obviously, with them coming into the year, Haas Factory Team switching manufacturers from Ford to Chevrolet definitely made you wonder if he was going to be able to come in and compete immediately, or it was going to take Haas a little bit more time to get completely up to speed. But I mean, after 2 weeks, I think it's pretty clear that they have a pretty solid squad on offer at the moment, and Creed took advantage of that. And, obviously with, a lot more cup drivers in the field more often, I think that all in all, this is an even more impressive win at one of NASCAR's, I would say, most challenging tracks. I know that with it being pack racing, there is a bit more of a negative sentiment around that where, oh, well, anyone can win there. Yes, at Talladega and Daytona, I would agree. Anyone can win at those tracks because of how large they are and how chaotic they can be. Atlanta tends to be less chaotic and a lot more of a driver's racetrack in terms of pack racing. So with that said, Sheldon Creed, super impressed by that victory. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does to continue the momentum he has from it. Moving on, though, what's your reaction, Matthew, to this top five that includes Parker Retzlaff and a new ride with Viking Motorsports this year, Nick Sanchez, who, again, another new ride this year with AM Racing, Corey Day, the rookie, and we'll talk more about him momentarily, and then 2025 champion Jesse Love. What's your reaction to that top five?
It's funny because I agree with you 100%, Tanner, based on Atlanta seems to be more of a predictable type thing because it's more driver base talent than like the chaos you see at Daytona and the chaos you see at Talladega. But man, I mean, look at that. Parker Retzlaff, Nick Sanchez, Corey Day, and Jesse Love. I mean, wow. I want to give a shout out though. Parker Retzlaff deserves all the credit in the world. That kid can race coming from iRacing. And I think even a lot of people in the industry know how talented he is. He just really has never had as great equipment. I mean, I think Jordan Anderson Motorsports has decent equipment. I feel like Viking Motorsports might be a step down from that, but I think the more funding they get, and now they're a two-car team with Anthony Alfredo, they might kind of – it was more of a lateral move in my opinion, but anything that gives that kid Parker Retzlaff a chance to go out there and do what he does best, and that's race cars, whether it's virtual or actual physical cars, I give him a shout out. Nick Sanchez, I want you to touch on this kid as well. To do that in the AM racing machine, pretty much they didn't even know if they were going to exist just 2 weeks prior to the season. I know the Sigma sale didn't really go through, and then Nick Sanchez got outed out of his ride with Big Machine Racing, and then Patrick Sarpulli took over that ride. I don't see Patrick Sarpulli in the top five, so Nick Sanchez is probably doing what he does best too, like Parker is, that's race cars. And that AM racing team, I don't think is anywhere near the capability of what Nick Sanchez can bring to any organization. I'm really surprised Spire didn't try to pick him back up, more or less like back in the Chevrolet camp. So, and then go back to trucks, but obviously they found their guys, their part-time drivers more or less over there. I think Nick Sanchez is a legitimate threat, maybe not for the championship, but talent-wise, I think Cup teams are going to be looking down on him. So if you see these guys in Ford that aren't performing very well, I mean, Noah Gragson, I know Josh Berry got a win. He was still, Todd Gillen doesn't start off very well. Nick Sanchez has an opportunity. He's still young to move up. I'll touch on 2025 champion Jesse Love, though, too. Yeah, I expect that out of him. I expect him to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, for the championship this year. He's just unbelievably talented. Can't wait to see him in a cup ride. Hopefully it's next year. I don't know who it will be with. There's so many rumors where he'll be. I think we kind of know an idea of where he's probably going to go.
I think a certain 7-time champion is, potentially tapped him already and mentioned it as recently as last year.
Yeah, something about those West Coast boys sticking together. So I would love to see Jesse Love back in a Toyota where it all started. We'll touch more on Toyota in a little bit too. And then Corey Day, I can't believe he finished fourth. He had everything on track. He had Ford drivers, he had Chevrolet drivers, he had Toyota drivers. But, the kid can race. He's got a lot of raw talent. I don't know if it's the raw talent that should be full-time in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. I think he should have way more starts under his belt in the Truck Series, in the ARCA Menard Series, in the Cars Tour, the ASA Star National Tour. Anything that we talk about on Grid Network, I would really like him to be in that is not either the Cup Series or the O'Reilly Series, to be honest with you. I think they're rushing him up, in my opinion. I'm just a panelist on a podcast talk show, so take my word for it, but just from what we've seen, he's got so much raw talent, but he's got to bring it in. And he hasn't brought that in. But once he does, he's going to be very successful, especially in that Hendrick Motorsports number 17 equipment. So that was my long answer about that. Parker Retzlaff, Nick Sanchez, Corey Day, Jesse Love. What are your takes on those guys?
Well, with Retzlaff, I am currently located in Wisconsin, so I'm in Retzlaff country, as it were. Obviously, Viking Motorsports had, I believe, a couple of seasons with Matt DiBenedetto behind the wheel, the former Cup Series driver for Wood Brothers, but he wasn't quite able to recapture the same success that he had found with Rackley War, I should say, in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, and ultimately, for funding or otherwise, ended up getting bounced from that ride, but Parker Retzlaff obviously displayed in that 2024 Daytona Cup race where he pushed Harrison Burton out to the victory that he has the chops at these kinds of tracks to compete no matter what his equipment level is. And it frankly doesn't really shock me. And John Wood, the current social media manager, and I believe he's just kind of like the overall manager of Wood Brothers right now, he pretty much said the same thing on Twitter in the immediate aftermath of that event. Like, the kid's got talent, and I'm hoping that at some point in the near future he gets an opportunity and great equipment to really show what he's capable of. Same thing with Nick Sanchez, who finished third. Man, I thought he was going to come through and end up taking the victory himself at certain points. And again, as you noted, Matthew, AM Racing, not exactly a powerhouse team in the NASCAR O'Reilly Series at the moment. And a team that until about a month ago didn't even know they were going racing this year. They thought they were going to sell themselves off to Sigma, and it just didn't end up happening that way. But I'm sure with, this good result to kick the season off, they're feeling pretty good about their prospects. And from what I understand, there's rumors that they might be getting some sort of an alliance with a Cup team here not too long from now. And I'll be honest, listening to his interview after the race and kind of how he was carrying himself, it reeked of Penske. So that could be something to watch out for. In addition to that, fourth, obviously, we had Corey Day. I'm not going to speak too much about him right in this moment because we have another question about him later. But Jesse Love, two, great, decent races to get the season started. Obviously, if you're in an RCR car, your intent should be to win these races. And I think if Austin Hill ever acted like a teammate towards Jesse Love, then, that probably would be a little bit easier for him to try to get the wins at these tracks. But at the end of the day, you can never really be too mad about a top five, especially in a points-based championship format. Speaking of the points, do we have those uploaded on here? I was trying to see if maybe we could post those, but it doesn't look like we do. Then again, it's week 2. So anyhow, moving on to our next question. There was a little bit of chaos there towards the end of the race, but throughout the day, we got reminded of a certain number 17 in the Hendrick Motorsports entry by the name of Corey Day. He had a very interesting drive to the finish to get fourth, we'll say. And 4 is a very coincidental number for him, considering that on lap 4 of the race, he triggered a massive accident at the very front of the field involving Ryan Sieg and a number of others that put Ryan Sieg, an owner driver, completely out of the race. Matthew, what was your, I mean, you kind of touched on it already, but what was your kind of like takeaway from Day's performance in this race and in last week's race, where he also had some trouble keeping the car straight?
Oh, it's funny. Number 4 too reminds you of the Cup finisher with a little bit of that same chaos in that event in Atlanta. But yeah, Corey Day, it kind of reminds me of if Kyle Larson had a little less talent and a lot less control. I think he's got the talent. Like I said, Corey Day's got a lot of potential, Tanner, but it's like it just shows every week that he should not be full-time in the series, and that's all due respect to him. I think he will win races eventually. I just don't think he should really be there right now, and I think the equipment, being in such great equipment, will play a role in how well he does. And just I have the points loaded on my phone here. So Austin Hill, Raja Caruth, I want to touch on him a little bit. Sheldon Creed, Jesse Love, Parker Retzlaff, Allgaier, Carson Quapple, who will be in the number 91 this week at COTA. And then Corey Day is actually 8th in the chase. So I respect the hustle. I respect the game. I know kind of putting him down a little bit, but I got to give him credit that at least in the first 2 races, whether he's hit every single thing out on the track, he is surviving well enough to get the points. I also want to shout out Ryan Ellis is actually 10th in points too. I believe that's the highest that organization has ever stood at any point in the season. I hope.
With all due respect, of course.
Yes, with all due respect. Yeah, nothing against them. Obviously, with the way the O'Reilly series works, I almost call it Xfinity, with Chevrolet manufacturers, that team, unfortunately, is going to be the lowest man on the totem pole when it comes to alliances with Chevrolet. So for them to be ahead of guys like Taylor Gray, pretty much all of Joe Gibbs Racing, I don't even have to mention them. Literally all of Joe Gibbs Racing, Ryan Ellis is ahead of. So I wanted to give him a shout out. But and then Corey Day as well. So I think the kid's got a lot of potential. He's under the wing of one of the most raw, talented drivers that we've ever seen in Kyle Larson. Unfortunately, I think with Kyle Larson too, we saw in the Cup race, sometimes that talent, he steps on his own foot. And I think that's what Corey Day, unfortunately, is doing a lot of right now, but he's still really young. And he'll be fine eventually. But for now, I want to critique him because he will make us eat our words in a few years, I bet, when he is a more polished race car driver. I don't know how you feel, but I think he'll eventually get there. I think the kids who have this much raw talent at such a young age eventually pan out, and I think he'll get there. At least he's going to win, whether it's ARCA, whether it's O'Reilly, or whether it's trucks. I think he's going to win. It just might not be in the 2026 season.
Well, you asked how I felt, so I'll give it to you. I think that Matthew and I talked a good bit about this in our Grid Slack channel about Corey Day's developments. And I kind of feel like that 4th place finish that he scored, a 2nd place finish that he scored in IRP last year in the Truck Series playoffs, I think that kind of gave too many people too much confidence in a guy that has only taken 25 oval starts in a premier racing series. That's just not enough. I'm sorry. And frankly, I do not think the NASCAR O'Reilly series needs to be a place where you are learning how to drive on asphalt or concrete, depending on the surface, obviously. The kid may have more talent than anybody in the sport combined, but the only way you're going to completely tap that potential is if you ramp him up properly. And I just do not think giving him 33 races in Hendrick Motorsports equipment at the O'Reilly Series level is a productive environment for a young driver with so little experience to be in. Obviously, at Daytona, he wiped himself out coming off of turn 4 at one point, and then I believe that he either got loose in front of William Sawalich or got William Sawalich loose and wrecked him and a bunch of other cars at Daytona, and then pretty much repeated that same performance this past weekend in Atlanta. I'm not saying that the kid doesn't have talent. Far from it. I mean, the kid on dirt is absolutely a fiend. And I'm sure with the right amount of time, patience, and care, he can potentially become a Cup Series driver. But right now, I am really not seeing it. And again, we haven't really gone to a real racetrack yet, but you look at if you look at his Reilly starts last year, it wasn't really anything special in the same equipment. Now, granted, this is a team that he's going to be working with week in and week out, all 33 weeks. I think with that in mind, it's entirely possible he could be doing a little bit better going forward, but I just think it's impossible to say. I mean, I believe he's 19 or 20 years old. Like, we've seen a number of guys come into the Rick Hendrick pipeline and get chewed up and spit out. Kyle Krisiloff, Boston Reed. These are names that some of you probably haven't heard in many, many, many years. And I just don't want him to end up like that. I think from what we've seen on the dirt scene, he is a very good prospect in terms of just his, ability to wrangle a race car. But I just feel like the kid hasn't figured out where the corners of his car are yet. And I mean, you could argue that his mentor also does not know that, especially after his performance in the Cup race this past week. But at the end of the day, like, I just feel like a full season of ARCA and like most of the truck schedule would have been more appropriate for a driver of his skill level at the moment. I mean, he hasn't even won in a stock car yet, from what I understand. I don't remember him winning or even competing to win an ARCA race yet. I can't remember him winning a truck race. Like I said, the best I saw out of him last year was second at IRP, but you could also chalk that up to the fact that if it wasn't Corey Heim winning the race, it was probably an FRM truck. With all that said, I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, but Hendrick, you got to just slow down. I mean, you've got a number of guys in your pipeline already, like Rajah Caruth, who we'll talk about shortly. You've obviously got everybody else at JRM. I mean, you just had to let Connor Zilic slide on through to Trackhouse. I'm sure that's not your most ideal scenario if I had to take a guess. So I don't know. I think Corey Day has a high ceiling, but he's got a long way to go from the floor to get there. And we're still definitely just kind of laying on our back on the floor. Finally, any other takeaways from this event, Matthew, before we move to trucks?
My main takeaway, like you had mentioned, I think Rajah Caruth, I mean, the amount of wheel that kid had to save.
He is a dog. Oh, my God. The way he was sawing on that wheel when the tire went down, how he didn't collect 20 cars, I don't know. That was super impressive. And he kept coming back every time. It was stupendous. What a performance from him to even get eighth.
And I'm so happy he's got the ride with Junior Motorsports for the majority of the season. I know it's a little chaotic over there with the way the seats are, like for this coming week as we're recording this live for Coda. I think Shane Van Gisbergen is in the 9, and then Connor Zilic goes to the 1, and then Carson Quappo is going to end up in the 91 for GGM. I think Raja still has the 88 for this race, but then coming up, he's going to be in the Jordan Anderson 32 car that Ross Chastain almost won the event in this past weekend. But yeah, Raja Creed,
a good car this year.
got a lot of talent in those cars. It was cool for Raja. I know even Bubba Wallace mentioned him in his interview, say I learned a lot from him, whether it was winning one stage, finishing second, and the other having a couple good saves, and then finishing 8th in the race. Maybe Bubba paid a little too much attention to Raja there, but man, what an incredible thing. Raja is kind of like, I think, a fine wine in the sense where I don't drink wine, so I'm just using the expression, but it seems like that kid just keeps getting better. You putting him in better equipment, he's learning his racecraft, and man, you just saw it on full display there. And I hope he's 23 now. I think if Hendrick Motorsports needs to replace somebody, which I don't know who it's going to be. Everyone thought it was going to be Carson Hocevar, but he signed long-term with Spire. So if Hendrick has to move a driver up anytime soon, whether it's 27, 28, probably I think Bowman deserves a little more time, but we'll see unless they poach another Cup guy, or even if they poach Jesse Love, but I already think he's signed. We'll see what happens there. But you would have to think Raja is one of their best options in the Chevrolet camp. He's young. I know he hasn't made a lot of O'Reilly starts, but he's already got the HendrickCars.com sponsorship. Corey Day should not be near a Cup car for at least 4 or 5 years. With all due respect to him, he's still got a lot of talent, but please don't put him in a Cup car yet. I don't really know who else. There's guys like Sam Mayer who potentially can make their way up eventually.
Sheldon Creed.
I know. See, Sheldon Creed is worried he's going to become like a Justin Allgaier archetype, and I know there's nothing wrong with being that, or like when Elliott Sadler dropped back down and won a good amount of races. I think this opened the dam for Sheldon Creed to really start winning races personally, but any Chevrolet camp's got a lot, but with Chevrolet, it seems like their development is more of just taking the Toyota guys who have no room to grow, or Ford. So we'll see what happens. But for you, sorry I took a little too long on that one, but any other takeaways besides like Raja Caruth?
Yeah, so with Raja, I think the path for him is actually probably through the Spire Cup pipeline. So I think depending on how this offseason goes, which I have some thoughts about that we'll probably touch upon during an off weekend at some point. But I think his best bet is probably going to, the 71 car in the Cup Series eventually, assuming either one of McDowell, Suarez, or God knows who else is going to, end up filling those cars up at some point. But at the same time, I mean, he has shown such steady development. And frankly, I mean, those Spire trucks are really not that good. Like, let's be completely real. I think the only person that we really saw truly dominate a race was Kyle Larson, and it was at Homestead. He is great at Homestead, no matter what you put him in. So with that in mind, like, I think this year getting put in S-tier equipment, he will absolutely start to blossom into the driver that many people think he can be. I among them. And yeah, I would love to see, a second black driver at the NASCAR Cup Series level. That'd be so cool. I don't think we've ever seen that before. And, I just think that as time wears on, history needs to, be made, and we got to march forward. And frankly, Raja Caruth, if he continues on the trajectory he's on, he's going to be there. Now, dropping down to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, they had is it Freight? Is that how that's pronounced?
It's that FR8, honestly.
Yeah, okay. The Freight Racing 208 from Atlanta kicked off NASCAR's weekend in Atlanta, started off with a weathery start, but the event began on a time clock as NASCAR implemented its adverse conditions policy, which states that at 4:20 p.m. Eastern time, regardless of where they were in the race, the next flag that the leader received would be the white flag. With less than 20 laps to go of the scheduled distance, the leaders were shown the white flag, and Kyle Busch held off a charging Gio Ruggiero and Ben Rhodes as he earned his record 9th victory at the track after some strong pushing by Spire teammate Carson Hocevar. This is now the 6th straight race at Atlanta where a Kyle Busch Motorsports affiliated driver has won. Busch has 4 of those victories. Christian Eckes has another, and Corey Heim has the other 2. Matt, how do you feel about this adverse conditions policy being implemented, and did that change your feeling about the finish?
I wasn't a happy camper when I saw that. Obviously, TV trumps all. That's the end of it. I know Fox and CW they're not the same channel, but I think for them, it was just a weird thing to have, but it had to be done when you think about it from the logistical standpoint of things. So, yeah, but I will argue, though, Tanner, it did not change my mind at all about the finish. I think it was still under 20 to go. I think there were drivers that were really mad about it. Corey Heim being one of those drivers mentioned in every single post-race interview that I saw, whether it was from Bob Pock, whether it was from above the yellow line, whether it was from catch fence, anything you name. Corey Heim was mad, and it wasn't even just the same interview. It was like multiple. But yeah, you're right. Corey Heim, obviously one of the best truck drivers we've ever seen in his short time in that series. Still finished in the top 6, top 5. So for him, I can see why he was mad, but I don't think it changed the finish at all for me. I think it was truly an awesome finish at EchoPark Speedway, which is Atlanta. I know we got to bounce back and forth. We're going to just call it Atlanta's EchoPark Speedway. That's probably maybe the best bet for us. But yeah, it was cool though to see 6 races in a row with the Kyle Busch Motorsports affiliated driver winning. Christian Eckes finished last in this race. I know he had issues.
He didn't even get started, really.
I know. I feel bad for him because I really think Christian Eckes is a favorite to win this title. I think now that Corey Heim's now back in that equipment, I think those McAnally trucks can really do some damage. Not like on track, like actual damage, but like winning races, except for one of them, 18th place. But yeah, so for that, if you look at the results there. But yeah, the adverse conditions rule, Tanner, it's like I hate the idea of it, but unfortunately, what TV broadcast windows, I think it could have been a lot different if both were shown on Fox Sports 1, but they weren't. So that's why TV trumps all. That's the only reason why they're really making a lot of money, which was a big thing of the charter lawsuit, was they wanted more TV money, a lot of it, because they weren't getting their fair share of it, the teams and drivers and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's kind of – it didn't change my feelings, though, about the finish. I think it was an awesome finish. I apologized on X, on Twitter, whatever we call it now, that I apologize for saying I did not like Atlanta at all, just the way it repaved. I think the first year of it was just not good. I just didn't enjoy it. But the way that even in just 2-3 seasons, now 4, aging of the track and allowing for not just pack racing like we see at Daytona, Talladega, but those drivers are going 100% for 100% of the race. And even guys like Bubba Wallace had mentioned it's the most mentally exhausting race that you're a part of because the spotter's constantly in your ear talking and you're on rails the entire time. So yeah, that's my thoughts about that. It was a great finish. Shout out to his teammate Carson Hocevar. And then even Gio Ruggiero is becoming a Tricon Joke the Speedway merchant. I mean, that kid can race the Speedway really well.
Indeed he can. So I'll touch on the Corey Heim bit on this first. You need to be mad at your race team for not telling you what the timer was on, first and foremost. So with that in mind, I do not have sympathy for the one team because they did not win when they think they could have, but I do have sympathy for Corey Heim. I feel like if the driver was made aware of what time it looked like or how many projected laps to go there were, he probably makes a move. But unfortunately, we didn't get to see that bear out. With that said, I think this particular policy is great and needs to be used more often at certain events. Like, I think it's Formula One has some sort of like clock that's always kind of like moving in the background where it's like you never see it, but I think it's like they need to get the races in within 2.5 hours. Personally, I would like to see that implemented in more instances in our lower series. They do not need to have 3-hour races just because we can't get enough of overtime. So, with that in mind, love the policy, think we should keep it. But one adjustment I would make is if we're on that big of a time crunch, maybe we get rid of stage yellows. Ooh. That's the only thing I can think of, because had we gotten the stage yellows taken, out of the equation, we'd probably get all of the scheduled distance in rather than pacing for 10 to 12 laps under caution for nothing. Nothing causes those cautions, but we take an eon to get back green. Drives me up a wall. But moving on, this partnership between Kyle Busch and Spire, is it something that you can see continue past this year, or do you think that Spire just needs a driver in the truck and Kyle needs a ride for truck races?
I think this is something that 100% can continue throughout the future, and I'm not talking the truck series. Talking the NASCAR Cup Series.
I was about to say you're clearly talking about the O'Reilly series where Spire totally has a presence.
Yeah, I remember the rumors that they were going to have a O'Reilly team, and I think that would have been awesome. I think they should still do that. I think, but then again, if you expand too fast, then there's some of your teams are not going to be as good as the others. So they probably would rather have good focus on trucks, and then obviously Cup. They got a lot of speed. I'm not going to say out of nowhere, but it seems like it was not. It was there somewhere. I think Carson Hocevar shows shades of how great he can be and will be, and even is. But yeah, it's like then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, they're competing for wins all the time. And then even Suarez, I want to shout him out, nice 10-5 at the Cup level. But I think Kyle Busch, if he leaves Richard Childress Racing, I think without a doubt in my mind he would be in a Spire Motorsports Chevrolet in 2027 and beyond. And I remember when he sold the whole Kyle Busch Motorsports and everything going on with that, he was guaranteed multiple truck races a year, and then I'm glad he's still doing truck races and winning. I love nothing makes me feel better than watching streaks live on, and for him to win in every single NASCAR season for the last 23 years, whether it was at least a Reilly truck or Cup. That's pretty dang impressive in my opinion. So I love to see that streak live on. But without a doubt, I think Suarez is on a 1-1 deal personally. I think McDowell's in his 40s. So pretty much it wouldn't shock me, Tanner, to be honest with you, if we saw Kyle Busch in either the 7 or the 71. And then depending on how well, obviously, one of those two guys do, if McDowell retires, I think McDowell still got it in him. I really do. Maybe not as great as he was these past couple seasons where he really did win. When he started winning race and then road course performance, he just became incredible on road courses. He is one of the better ones. I know he's a sleeper one, but he obviously won. Was it the Indy road course was his second win?
I was there for that, yes.
Yeah, I know that probably was uneventful victory, but
no, I hate that people are so down on that race. Granted, would have preferred Suarez won that day if I'm being completely transparent. But with that said, I loved the fact that I got into a race and it was about 2 hours and then it was done. That was awesome. I would love if more races went without stage cautions. Yeah. If we could abolish them tomorrow, the sport would be 20% better. I promise.
Yeah, I love stages. I'm very pro stage. My mother's probably watching this right now. One thing she always tells me is that she was watching NASCAR before I even existed. She hates stages. See, I'm pro stage. I like when drivers are rewarded for not tanking the entire race and being there at the end. I like if you're running up front for the first two and then have something fail that you still get enough points. But I agree with stage breaks. I think they should go back to kind of mixing it up a little bit. I think the strategy on the road courses with the stage breaks non-existent would be pretty cool. But yeah, like just to wrap up my point about Kyle, wouldn't shock me if Kyle Busch was a Spire Motorsports driver. I don't know what's going to happen with that Brexton deal. The Richard Childress said he's got to ride whenever he gets up here. Brexton's like 10 or 11 years old. But hey, Spire might have more of a future than Richard Childress Racing in terms of the amount of money they're investing into the sport. Richard Childress does a lot, don't get me wrong. But I mean, in terms of the future, the way Spire's more on the up climb, while Richard Childress is kind of plateaued. Not at the O'Reilly level, but at the Cup level. Well, they've kind of been like that for quite a while, I feel. But with the occasional win here, win there. But Kyle Busch, when you get to one of the greatest drivers of all time in your organization, you expect to do better. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think Carson Hocevar and Kyle Busch would be really fun teammates together at the Cup level. Talk about frenemies from when Hocevar was 13 years old, wrecking Kyle Busch at a late model race. And Kyle Busch is like, who the hell is this kid? Now look at Hocevar pushing him to victory. So,
yeah, definitely for Kyle, I'm sure it's kind of a weird full circle moment, a whole decade later, basically. All right, chat, huddle up. It's time to talk about some theories I've got. So, I think Kyle Busch is driving for Spire next year in the Cup Series and probably the Truck Series too, but the Cup Series. I think that they gave Suarez a prove it deal, which is basically, as Matthew displayed, a 1-1. So if he continues to perform this year, they'll boost him back up next year. I think that McDowell's contract, which I don't know the details of, I think it's going to be the fact that it's going to come down to one of those two. Obviously, Carson Hocevar received a massive, massive extension prior to this season that will keep him in the 77 car into, quote, the 2030s. So that's at least the next 5 seasons. So obviously he's under no threat of leaving that car anytime soon. But I think that team just needs an actually great veteran presence. And no offense to Michael McDowell, he is just not that. His 2 wins at the Cup level, the 2 races where he has shown any amount of competitiveness outside of that one Talladega race where he completely wrecked himself in front of God and everybody on the last lap, are a road course where there weren't stage cautions, and the only reason he really won that race is because a lapped car held up Chase Elliott for like 7 or 8 laps for no good reason, and his main competitor in that race got a very slow final pit stop that held him back for 10 seconds. And the other one where he wiped out everybody in front of him and behind him at Daytona. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm sure that sounds disrespectful, but at the end of the day, he is not like a Cup Series stalwart by any stretch. He is not consistently good at real racetracks that NASCAR races on and has a predominant showing of in their schedule. And by that, I mean traditional ovals where you actually have to use the brake pedal. So with that in mind, I just feel like Suarez is the better driver of the two. And he, with his sponsorship money, is likely to get renewed over McDowell if the performance numbers are relatively similar. All of that said, I think Kyle Busch, who has an extensive relationship with Jeff Dickerson that extends back to, I believe at one point, Jeff was his spotter. He used to be Kyle's agent. It just makes too much sense. So I suspect what will happen is Kyle's probably going to get offered not only a ride there, but probably equity in the team and finish his career out there, kind of riding off of the house that he built, so to speak. Obviously, as you touched upon, Kyle did sell his Truck Series outfit to Spire Motorsports at the end of the 2023 season. This would be a way for him to, kind of reclaim that and also finish his career out on his own terms, because there's no way in hell Jeff Dickerson is kicking Kyle Busch out of a race car. Let's just be real. That said, I think that Spire Motorsports is a team that's on the upswing. Obviously, they're owned by Dan Tauris and the TWG people. So I think that, yes, big money, as it were. Obviously, I think that they're a team on the upswing, and as the decade rolls along and Kyle Busch's career begins to, go on its final journey, I think he'll be in a Spire Motorsports Chevy, or I'll just say machine. May not be a Chevy at the end of the decade. Who knows? With that said, let's talk about Hocevar a little bit before we move on to Super 2. So I feel like in the truck race, he had a very modest, mature race. A lot of people came into my DMs talking about, oh man, he looks like he's maybe turned a corner. And then he comes out of the Cup race the next day, and he's involved in at least two separate actual incidents, and then he blocked another driver a couple times towards the end of the event that aroused some controversy amongst the fan base. So, Matthew, what's your take on Hocevar's conduct this weekend? How'd the Hurricane fare in your mind?
Oh, I was talking to Joe during the Grid Live wrap-up. I mentioned the Art and Senna quote, if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver. It feels like Carson Hocevar likes to go for gaps that are there for a millisecond, and he has such a great hand-eye coordination that he goes for it but by the time his car speeds up enough, the gap isn't there anymore, and he puts Bell and Bubba into each other, and then Bell inevitably into the wall. But yeah, Carson Hocevar, I feel like I know the comparison, Tanner, is like a lot like Ross Chastain, like a driver who's got a lot of talent and that is going to hit a lot of stuff at first, but then we'll get there. I think especially 2022 Ross Chastain was so fun to watch until the whole thing the following year with Darlington and him getting into Kyle Larson. Then all of a sudden Ross was very tamed. I don't like that. I like when Ross Chastain is Ross Chastain. The kid has worked his way up. He is truly an incredible driver. I really do enjoy watching Ross Chastain for what he's been able to do for drivers too in development. I have a lot of respect for him there. But yeah, Carson Hocevar, even I know if we remember last year, Ross Chastain was one of the few that, speaking the Hocevar, kind of like, what are you doing, bro? Like, and then it's funny, it was kind of like throwing stones in a glass house when Chastain was saying it to Hocevar, but now you can kind of see why he was saying that. So for Hocevar, yeah, he was hitting a lot of stuff in the Cup race, throwing bad blocks, which you have to do what you got to do. I don't even think Freddie Kraft or Bubba Wallace were mad about the block on the last lap that put Bubba back from like 4th to 8th because Bubba threw a bad block. It just went too early. But Hocevar's trying to win the race. And when Denny Hamlin's mentioned on Actions Detrimental before, where on that last lap, you just kind of turn something in your head goes like, okay, now I got to go win this race. Like he mentioned that with probably Reilly Herbst thinking, not realizing that Brad Keselowski was coming on the outside, and he's just like, I got to go make this move. I think Carson Hocevar does that specific, I got to make this move throughout the whole race. And it showed. He was throwing slide jobs. He was doing a lot. And then even the truck race, he was making some crazy moves. But you got to respect that he didn't hit nearly as much as Corey Day did. And I think Corey Day will get there eventually. But Carson Hocevar is going to win a lot of races. Ryan Blaney has even mentioned it on, I think it was Door Bumper Clear, that Hocevar did actually text drivers and apologize for his actions. That goes a long way in an industry. And even I think Kevin Harvick mentioned on his podcast, a lot of drivers got their own podcast. But even Kevin Harvick mentioned he would have probably wrecked Hocevar. Like, don't do that stupid stuff around me. And he was like, Harvick said, I would have done the same thing, but you have to show these kids a lesson, not like intentionally wreck them, but, give them a little bit too much bumper, rattle his cage, per se. But, yeah, Hocevar had a lot of talent. I'm interested to see what you feel about him because you're one of the few I'm going to mention on Grid Rising. You have been a Carson Hocevar. You know this kid's going to be talented for at least since he was 19, 18 years old.
17.
Exactly. So you're one of the, I want to say, few that has saw his potential throughout what he's been able to accomplish. So I'm interested how you feel that he turned a corner. Like, what are you thinking about this kid?
Well, okay. The Logano incident was very clearly, in my opinion, not his fault. And I genuinely do not understand why people are mad at him for that one at all. And again, most of you people that are complaining about him hate Logano. So, what's the problem here? Logano wrecks himself off the 77. Isn't that, what you all want to happen? And, nobody else got taken out. Logano just had a lazy slide through the infield, and everybody was okay. I don't see the problem here. Obviously, the Bell incident in overtime, not great. Did not love that. But, we've seen another Michigander prior to him do this exact same thing. This is just Brad Keselowski all over again. I mean, that exact incident reminded me so much of the Jeff Gordon incident at Texas back in 2014 that obviously sparked that massive pit road brawl. During the playoffs of 2014. I think that Hocevar in a lot of ways has matured and has grown as a driver. Obviously, he has moments like the Bell incident where it's like, buddy, what did you see there that I didn't? What did you see that nobody else on earth saw? At the end of the day, though, he's got to live and die by his mistakes. he's got to, strap back in next Sunday, knowing that Christopher Bell is probably mad at him. And I think that could be a problem for him going forward. But again, that's his burden to bear. That's what happens when you make contact with people and it isn't really all that necessary. So with all that said, I know that on the Gay Racing podcast, shout out to Alex and Zach over there, former members of, Alex is a former member of Grid Encore. They mentioned they had some folks over there talking about how, Hocevar is, kind of a weapon out there. And obviously I don't disagree with that all the time, but to act like he hasn't improved as a driver in his 3 years in Cup is just completely ridiculous. It's an absolutely ludicrous take. I don't know. Personally, he went from being a non-factor in the 600 his rookie year to being on track to win that race last year before his engine literally gave out on him at the 450-mile mark. So I don't know. Obviously, I want to see this kid continue to mature and succeed at this level. He does things from time to time, definitely test your patience as a viewer, but he makes it interesting. You can't take that away from him. So I am looking forward to seeing how Carson Hocevar is going to entertain us next week at COTA and the weeks after that. So that's really all I got to say about that topic. So let's move on down under. We're going to be talking about Super 2. The Dunlop Super 2 season kicked off with a doubleheader weekend at Sydney Motorsports Park. In the first race, Brad Jones Racing's Brad Vaughn wheeled his Holden Commodore to victory from the pole. The win represents his third of his career and is technically his second in a row after taking the final race at Adelaide to cap off 2025. Joining Vaughn on the podium in race 1 were Tickford Autosports' Ruben Goodall and Anderson Motorsports' Ryan Tomset, both in Fords. And Matthew, I think you've got us talking about Super 2 second race. So what do you got on that one?
Absolutely. But before I do that, I want to show the official results. Just to make sure, let the people know, Super 2 won't be racing for quite a while after this.
Yeah.
Schedule. I saw that, and I had to I wanted to take my contacts and be like, "Is it really say June? What the heck?" I think it was June, right? But yeah, so that was the results of race 1. And I'll throw up race 2 here. As for race 2, the start wasn't nearly as clean as Tickford's Ben Gomersall shot off the line, leaving pole sitter. We're going to call him Lockie because his name is Lachlan. Lockie Dalton's Blanchard Racing Team machine in the dust. Dalton recovered well enough to cover a move from Goodall off, retaining that second spot. A few moments later, Dalton gathered his bearings and began his attack on Gomersall. That led to contact between the two racers right under around the 31-minute mark of the event. These are timed events coming out at the final turn. Dalton eventually wiggled by Gomersall again before Alice Buckley's Ford expired, but bringing out the first safety car of the doubleheader. And despite the field getting bunched back up, the rest of the Super 2 field failed to supplement Dalton as the 2025 championship runner-up nabbed his fourth career victory, while Gomersall took second after third place. As you can see next to me, Nash Morris was levied a 5-second time penalty for passing before the line on a restart. And then after the two events, Vaughn and Dalton are knotted up at the top of the season standings. I love to see that. Now they have about 3 months to kind of stay there. And then good old Gomersall and then Zach Best rounding out the top 5. That was just Super 2. It was just not really as eventful, Tanner, as I thought it was going to be. Watching some of the highlights back, it was kind of like the first race like you had just talked about. I'll pull that back up here too. Those 3 were in the top 3, I think, 100% of the time. So it was kind of just one of those. But, hey, every race weekend can't be as exciting as usual. Another one, up to you if you want me to continue. We got some more racing to talk about. I will throw it over to another series that I truly enjoy, the Cars Tour West. Yes, I love the Cars Tour West. The super late model nursery battle at the Bullring at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Bullring took place on Saturday night with 150 laps of short track racing. I got one of my favorite short track racers, Silas Ripley out of Maine. I love working with the kid. I just wanted to show some support there too. He doesn't race in the series, but you got to give a shout out where you have the opportunity, right? But Chris Klein took the pole for the 150 lap feature, but was almost immediately overtaken by defending series champion Jace Hansen. Reason why Jace Hansen is a champion in that series, he showed it. He was on display. This race featured caution after caution after caution, Tanner. There were cars on top of each other too, like near where Victory Lane was. It was chaotic. I know some people that were at the event. It was very cold out there too. Hansen did lead the majority of the event, and it seemed like nobody had anything for him. Until with 10 laps remaining, Hansen made a slight mistake entering turn 3. He said that he ran over some speedy dry, and this young kid by the name of 15-year-old Taylor Mayhew, Tanner, he was on the bottom. He then cruised right by Hansen, and nobody was catching him. He went on to win his first career super late model race in his first career super late model start in the series. And I just want to shout out Jace Hansen too, but Taylor Mayhew, Bakerfield's own. The reason why I mentioned that too, like I just mentioned, Mayhew, Hansen. I want to round out this top 5 here. Bryce Bezenson finished 3rd. Hayden Plybon and Keelan Harvick rounded out the top 5. I want to shout out Vito Cancilla in 6th place as well. He's somebody we talked a lot about on the first episode of Grid Rising. Mayhew is also one to shout out. The reason why I said Bakersfield, obviously, when you think Bakersfield NASCAR, you think of one of the greatest to ever do it in Kevin Harvick. Mayhew will be making his ARCA West debut at Kevin Harvick's current raceway, which is one of the best tracks I have ever seen. I love for super late model racing, whether it's ARCA West racing. I love Kevin Harvick's current raceway. I wish they could host a clash there or something. So just touching on that, Tanner, I'm a little chaotic with my explanation of the Car Store West. And then they got new series coming, Northwest Pro Late Model. There's so many things going on over there. They're doing great things. So for you, Tanner, my only question really about the Car Store West were what were your initial thoughts about this opener?
I mean, I'm not as, versed in the late model, super late model scene as far as outside of my immediate vicinity. But with that said, the Car Store West put on a pretty good little show. And it was really cool to see Taylor Mayhew, who is the son of former NASCAR driver David Mayhew, go out there and, basically steal a victory away. But I mean, hey, personally, I'd take a win however I can get it. Obviously, Jace Hansen, tough break for him to, be dominating most of the night and just not be able to seal it. But the way that car was driving that night, you've got to believe he's going to come back and make his way back and get a victory before the end of this season's out. Obviously, it just got started. With that said, I think that there's a lot of talent throughout this whole field. Obviously, this series is trying to get more developed as time wears on with, obviously when Kevin Harvick bought into the sport, or bought into the series, I should say, I'm pretty sure the intent was solely to create westward expansion because Harvick's career started out in Winston West, which at that time was NASCAR sanctioned late model racing, essentially. Those series have now been basically folded into ARCA and are ARCA West and ARCA East, but this is, in my opinion, a really nice throwback to those old Winston West type of races. And, obviously we did see a decent amount of carnage, which I was a little surprised by. But at the end of the day, it was a fun little race, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with this series as the year crawls on. Matthew, what did you think of Taylor Mayhew and just the race overall?
It was one of those races, I guess, even though there were a lot of cautions, it felt like not as much was happening. I feel bad for guys like Vito Cancilla, who started 17th, made his way through the field. Then it was like he was involved in a wreck. Then he went back and he made his way through the field and wreck. And it was just like chaotic. And then guys shouting out on the line, obviously started on pole. Buddy Shepard's a great driver too. it's like it's just no luck for a lot of these guys. And I mean, I feel the worst for Jace Hansen, obviously putting belt to butt for the majority of the event, and then having Taylor Mayhew right place, right time, and running with a speedy drive that caused a red flag, and that's what happens. But yeah, there's a lot of talent out in the West. Obviously, like you had mentioned with Kevin Harvick, a lot of West Coast guys. Ron Hornaday Jr. being one of them, one of the best to do it in the Truck Series. Came from the West Coast too. Guys, he raced at Irwindale, Saugus Speedway, stuff like that. And then Kevin Harvick, obviously, those two working together, seeing the development of a lot of these guys. The fifth place finisher there, Keelan Harvick. And it's so cool, honestly. Nothing makes me feel better, Tanner, than to see that number when Keelan drives that number 62 car and it has the Spears sponsorship on it, just like his father did many, many moons ago in the Late Model Series. And even the trucks, I believe, Harvick had the Spears sponsorship too. And that's the sponsor of the series, which is awesome. So to see Keelan in that car every so often too, it's just awesome. I don't know what else, if you have any other thoughts before we take it to the next part of this. So this one, very, very interesting. So I'm going to pull up a photo really quick. Let me get rid of these results and pull up a photo. We're still kind of in the background. So Taylor, this is a car from the Car Store. If you couldn't guess, I don't want to give it away.
It is a real tree late model, yes.
So that is Keelan Harvick's Reilly War number 62 late model. Do you notice anything weird about that? See, this isn't a script. I didn't tell Tanner I was going to throw this photo up there. Do you notice anything different about that vehicle?
It doesn't appear to be any sort of a badge on it, so I would assume it's, not factory affiliated.
That is exactly right. See, I was kind of shocked. I was watching that, and Vito, his teammate, had the Chevrolet logo. Keelan's always got the Chevrolet logo. I'm like, so why would Keelan Harvick not be sporting Chevrolet in this event? And then there was some breaking news on Monday morning that 13-year-old Keelan Harvick signed a long-term commitment to be a Toyota racing development driver. Now that, I think, caught every single person that's ever watched racing off guard, especially with Harvick's ties to Chevrolet and Ford. But Toyota, one thing they do is they find these young, incredible, talented drivers, and they were like, we're going to get him, whether it was Jesse Love, whether it was Corey Heim, Christopher Bell, Eric Jones. All these guys came from the Toyota ranks. And now Keelan Harvick, the 13-year-old kid. And one thing I want to mention, too, before I talk a little bit about him, even Ron, who Ron worked with Kevin Harvick, Ron said that Keelan Harvick at 13 years old was 3 times better than the future Hall of Fame Kevin Harvick was at that age. So Keelan's got all the potential in the world. Incredible kid. I know people who work with him. Really the most well-respected and gives respect young man you'll see out there. But, yeah, he interesting no nose plate on him. The 13-year-old will continue to pilot that Reilly War machine. The Reilly War machine still number 62, but it will be under a Toyota instead of a Chevrolet. I think a lot of people realize the engine is pretty much the same. It's just the only thing that changes is the nose and maybe the logo that he got on his suit. He never had one anyway, I don't believe. So ExxonMobil will be the primary sponsor for his event. And really, this kid, Keelan Harvick, is truly an incredible talent. And just for you guys to know about Reilly War, obviously, the truck team with Dawson Sutton Chevrolet, Tony Briding are part-time with Chevrolet, leaving Toyota. And then you have so many drivers. Rodney Dawson Jr. just with them. He's in a Chevrolet. Dawson Sutton Racing Super Late Models is a Chevrolet. But look at 2 drivers that also race with the organization. William Sawalich and now Keelan Harvick, they are both Toyota drivers now. So it was interesting to see a team do that, but it happens. It really, at the end of the day, I think it kind of shows the motors really don't have that much of a difference at that level. And I think you'll see it more often when you see drivers bounce back and forth between manufacturers. So for my long story short, Harvick, one, did this news catch you off guard? And then 2, what should we expect from Keelan Harvick?
So I think if you're a Kevin Harvick aficionado like myself, obviously he was kind of what drew me into NASCAR as a little kid. And I followed his career pretty much all the way out and went to his final race. This kind of news did not actually surprise me too much. If you go back and look at some J-Ski pages from 2005, 2006, 2007, and all the way through 2010 or so, you would see that Harvick had conversations with a number of different teams that ended up being Toyota affiliated, including, but not limited to, Joe Gibbs Racing, Red Bull, and I believe Michael Waltrip probably hit his line every now and again, and probably Bill Davis too, but I mean, those were both cars that were lower tier, in my opinion, than RCR could offer. So it seemed like the only two that were true blue offers that were on his table were coming from JGR and Team Red Bull. So with that in mind, there is an established relationship, and I would say there's kind of, a shared affinity for one another when it comes to Harvick and Toyota. Obviously, they respected his talent as a driver and respect his mind now that, he's been in the agency scene for a very long time and, obviously signing all these very talented drivers, bringing them into heavy stock cars and, leading them to prominence. So with that said, I am not terribly shocked by this news like some other people are. I mean, Harvick wasn't beholden to any sort of a manufacturer during his own career. He obviously did run a Chevy for most of it, but he had just as much success in the Ford, I would argue. So with all that in mind, Kevin Harvick will drive anything you put him in. His kid, I'm assuming, will probably be the exact same way as he continues to age, mature, and develop. And at the end of the day, I mean, Toyota puts the most in their development pipeline of any manufacturer. So if you want your kid in the best possible equipment and in the most funding, Toyota is definitely the way to go. So all that said, I wish him luck in his development. Matthew, do you have anything else to touch on before we move on to Super Motocross?
Not really. I'm more interested to see when Kevin Harvick does his Rackley War starts, if he is going to be with Chevrolet like he has been, or if he is going to join the Toyota Racing Development Camp. I don't know if he is affiliated really, like you said, with the manufacturer. I know Ram, there's nothing that I've heard, or I don't think anyone's heard, but if Ram came calling to Kevin Harvick, I'm sure he would maybe put it. I don't know. See, Kevin Harvick, he still races. No, we heard other guys who haven't raced in a while.
He won recently.
He did, yeah, exactly.
He went out of the way.
So not even just racing for racing. He's still winning races, Kevin Harvick is. And then you hear guys like Elliott Sadler's making his first stock car start in a smart modified race coming up.
Yeah, first in 7 years. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so for him, it's like maybe he's a Ram driver too. We don't know. I know guys like Casey Kane made starts, but hey, Kevin Harvick, you're one of the best to ever do it. Love to see you reach that. I think he's near 1,300 starts in his career, or pretty close to combined all three series. I'd have to look into that. I know Kyle Busch just reached that. So for him, yeah, that's all I got to say is shout out Keelan Harvick is truly an incredible kid. Not even just because of the last name, like people stereotypically put him with, Harvick being Harvick. Keelan Harvick is the real deal. He really is. I promise you guys that. Whether it was legend cars kicking butt, whether it's late models kicking butt. I mean, this kid is beating grown men who have been doing it. Exactly. When he even almost went to the European circuit to race go-karts. I know that was a part of Kevin Harvick conversations talking about Keelan signing with Toyota. So I'm excited for Keelan Harvick, and it's going to be so crazy. And so he's 13, probably 6 to 7 years, not the meme, but he'll probably be near the cup level, at least pretty close. And it's interesting if Joe Gibbs Racing is going to still be Toyota, or who goes to Toyota, or if when he turns 18, he leaves Toyota. We don't know what's going to happen. So that's pretty much all I got for him.
Not like he's lacking for funding. I mean, his dad's going to bankroll whatever he needs to. I mean,
and Toyota too. I mean, if you look at JBL, Mobile One, Exxon Mobil, all these ones featured in that press release. I mean, that's one less worry from that perspective is trying to go find the funding when it's already there. So Keelan can go be Keelan freaking Harvick, KPH, the initials on that kid. But yeah, he's truly an awesome kid. A lot of respect for him. But so 4 wheels, Tanner, we talked a lot about that for a little over an hour. Now let's go do a little bit of some 2-wheel action.
Yeah, I think it's time to play in the dirt a little bit, Matthew. So we're going to be heading down to Arlington, where the Super Motocross Tour took on the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, which I had never heard of prior to this weekend. In the 250cc main event, we had Cole Davies and Seth Hamaker obviously win the heats, but unfortunately, both of their main races came to an end pretty early. Not to an actual end, but they knocked themselves out of contention by getting into one another, coming into the first turn out of the hole shot, and unfortunately, they ended up taking out Nate Thrasher with them. However, the story of the weekend was defending 250cc champion Joe Shimoda, who was able to take out reigning not reigning champion, but phenom Hayden Deegan in that championship final last year. And unfortunately, in the off season, he suffered a wicked testing crash that led him to getting surgery on 2 broken vertebrae in his back. And technically, he wasn't even supposed to be back on track just yet, but because of his tireless rehab schedule and his general determination, the doctors said that he was well enough to race, and he went out and put on a show for a good little while. Shimoda not only got the whole shot, but he held the advantage and extended it as much as 3 seconds for much of the first half. That is until around the 11-minute mark, where as he was coming around to the finish line to complete a lap, the red lights on the pillar lit up. And as anybody that's ever watched Supercross knows, you got to slow down when that happens, because that means it's probably a red flag. Well, must have been some sort of error, glitch, or something. And as a result, Shimoda's 3-second advantage completely evaporated as he slowed down, allowing Pierce Brown on the Yamaha to slip by his Honda. At the end of the day, Shimoda stuck around for another 5 or 6 minutes, trying tirelessly to get back by Brown without making contact, but unfortunately, Shimoda was unable to reclaim the lead, and Pierce Brown scooted away to his very first main event victory. And with that in mind, obviously there's a lot to be said here about officiating and kind of the nature of all of this. But Matthew, I mean, you and I come from motorsports. We come from asphalt stuff where officiating calls are kind of a pretty common topic. So you watch the footage. What's your take on this as someone who's a bit more of a Supercross novice? What do you think should have happened there?
I think, Tanner, with the highlights, they should have put more emphasis on the fact that this happened. Because if you watch the official highlight video of this event, back, it's more towards the end, obviously, being the main event. All you see is Shimoda just get passed by Pierce Brown on the timing thing, not even on track. And you're like, well, what the heck happened? Apparently, they went into it about it. My take is that this stuff shouldn't happen. And the reason why I say that is I saw more clips. I did more research trying to figure out, well, what actually happened here? And the red light did come on, and Shimoda saw it, and he slowed down because the rule at least used to be, or in the champion's mind, used to be when you saw red, you stop. You can't jump over the hills. You go slow. So apparently, I can't quote me on this, but I was watching a couple guys who seem to know a lot more about this than I do, and they were saying that they had changed the color from yellow to red so it was more noticeable, and it's supposed to be a warning still. But red, Tanner, does not mean warning, I don't believe. I think yellow should still be warning. Just make it a brighter yellow. Change the bulbs or something. Make it more noticeable. Because when you have a successful 250cc world champion not understanding that rule that apparently exists, that says a lot. And for him to slow down and then obviously lose the lead, not really the best way for Pierce Brown to get his first victory. but it was inevitable. It was going to happen. Just unfortunately happened under that. I think race control should have noticed that immediately. Kind of like, well, why did Joe Shimoda just randomly slow down? Oh, wait, we threw a red thing. So then there was a driver laying on the track, or on the course, I should say. So my take on it is that I don't really know what they can honestly do. You couldn't really. A lot of people were saying give Shimoda the win, but you don't know. He could have done something wrong in that remaining 10, 11 minutes that would have given Brown the victory anyway. So I don't like. What can you really do about that besides just one of those things? If it doesn't happen in the moment, it kind of really can't happen. And I believe they announced they're not going to do anything about it. So I guess it's up to Shimoda to get his own vengeance and go out there and win. And now he, I guess, knows the rule that the red apparently isn't red. It means, it's a warning. So I don't know how that's going to happen now the next time a red light comes on and it is for a red flag. If they're going to penalize the drivers immediately for maybe doing that extra jump over a bump or a hill, whatever I guess they call it. So you're obviously well more informed on this, so I really want to hear your take about it. That's just kind of what I saw from an outsider perspective looking in, and that's all I can really give. So I've got to be honest with everyone. But yes, Mr. Tanner, please take it away. What was your take on this situation? And as somebody who knows about Supercross, what would have you done in that situation?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have hit the light to tell people to slow down when there wasn't a need to actually slow down. I also wouldn't have changed the rule to make it a red light. Who the hell does that? With all due respect, sorry for my language, but no one on earth sees red and says, oh, I'm going to slow down for that. I'm going to keep going, but I'm going to slow down. Not a single soul on earth. This rule change makes genuinely no sense. And I think they changed it just to change it. Oh, yellow's too hard to see under the lights. Okay, well, there's people all over the track, marshals that wave yellow flags if there is a caution-worthy accident happening. And there is a red and a safety flag for when we need to completely shut the event down and restart it when there is a specifically bad accident, as we saw in the second heat, I believe it was. So with all that in mind, I think the right thing to do if you're Pierce Brown would have been to be sportsman and pull back over and let it back by, but that's not what we saw. If I was the officiating body, I would have absolutely made them switch positions. Even if it's just you let Shimoda get a wheel back ahead, I still think that's better than what they did, which was genuinely nothing. I just think the rule itself sucks. I think the way that they have handled the situation in the aftermath has also sucked. I think the way the NBC covered this in complete disaster has been terrible and sucks. So all of that said, I just feel bad for Joe Shimoda. I think that, granted, he could have easily, as Matthew pointed out, could have easily lost the lead natural way after the fact. But at the end of the day, that's just what it could have, should have. We are assuming that Pierce Brown would have caught him anyway, and I'm not sure that's the case. So, yeah, it left me with a sour taste in my mouth, unfortunately. I like when, we get to see drivers race wheel to wheel and really battle it out, and this just felt like a very fabricated way to get to that. And I think had this race played naturally, Joe Shimoda probably cruises to a very easy victory. But as Kanye West once said, I guess we'll never know. With that said, we'll be moving into our final segment here shortly. But before we do that, I would like to shine a spotlight on Grid Tonight's Kobe Lambeth. He recently dropped a new article where he did an interview with Connor Zilisch, the Cup Series phenom. And if you are interested in taking a peek at that, we have linked it in our comments section. But with that said, one last bit of news that we wanted to get to from last week, and will be talked about more at length tomorrow on Grid Tonight, is there is another new entry into NASCAR. Unfortunately, it seems that we're heading back to the Western District of North Carolina courtroom for a lawsuit between Joe Gibbs Racing, who has filed a motion for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction requiring Chris Gabehart, their former crew chief and competition director, to cease and desist working or performing any services for Spire Motorsports, similar to those he provided to JGR for the 18 months following February 9th, 2026. That is via Bob Pockrass. Essentially, the situation surrounds Gabehart's departure towards the end of the 2025 NASCAR season and the immediate aftermath of it. It all boils down to, is he allowed to like take his setups and intellectual property over to another company and use that to help them grow and improve? Personally, had this happened back in 1996 and not 2026, this would not be a lawsuit or a discussion at all. This is just a sign of racing getting too big for its britches and people having sour grapes in my mind. If something happens later on and I end up, having egg on my face, so be it. But frankly, this is just a really disappointing situation to start the racing season on, especially for Chris Gabehart, who it seems like is just trying to move on and, perform his duties as, I believe he is chief motorsports director now at Spire Motorsports, whatever the heck that means. Very unfortunate situation in NASCAR. Matthew, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm very excited to hear the grid tonight, guys. Touch more on that. That just dropped live on air when we were talking here on this Tuesday evening. But yeah, it's interesting to see some of the filings. You don't know if they're true or not, but that Chris Gabehart had a Spire Motorsports tab on his computer or whatever that apparently Joe Gibbs Racing saw in some way, shape, or form because the emails were connected, whatever. So these are all accusations at this point. So please don't take any of this like it's the full truth. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think Joe Gibbs could probably use the ammunition that Carson Hocevar is really lighting it up as maybe they did steal something. So that's just going to be one of those court things that if you're trying to win a case, you're going to bring something like that. But yeah, I'm interested to see what will happen if in fact he does get that 18-month temporary thing. But yeah, shout out to Bob Pockrass for that tweet. I know everyone else got it, and his was just easiest to copy and paste into the chat, so we went with that one. But yeah, and lots of courtroom action. Everyone seems to just not want to focus on racing. We got to have other stuff happen, or maybe too much on racing, right, to where we start doing silly things. Again, all accusations. Don't know what's going on. But Tanner, I'll throw it back to you for we're wrapping up, thankfully. Sorry it takes so long, but we love what you do. I'm glad there's a lot of people still sticking with us on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, and X even too. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for episode 2. We're going to continue on with a fun category. I'll throw it to you, Tanner.
Indeed. Yeah, Matthew, we are going to our Grid Rising Shining Moments for the week. This is where we spotlight a driver or a team that performed exemplary throughout the weekend. I am going to first start off with Joe Shimoda, who we did just talk about in our motocross or our Supercross section. The Honda rider, the defending Series 250cc champion, returned after, as I mentioned, a horrifying wreck in testing that broke 2 bones in his back, in his actual spine. And this man said, 3 or 4 months, I'll be back on the bike. No big deal. It's a true testament to the kind of rider that he is and his spirit, determination. And obviously it would have been great. It would have been an amazing story had he came out and won the race. But at the end of the day, a very solid podium finish in both the heat and in the main are supremely impressive considering the circumstances, when we all know he is definitely not at 100% just yet. So hats off to Joe Shimoda. I'm looking forward to watching him throughout the rest of the Supercross season. But I'm done with my bit of this. So, Matthew, what's your grid shining moment?
Mine probably an obvious one, Tanner. I think we've been waiting, it feels like decades, but it's been half a decade. Sheldon Creed, personally, is my one shining moment. About time he finally got it done. And I think what I really want to focus on with Sheldon Creed is the fact that in his interview, obviously this is maybe the second most important win of his young career. I mean, he's been around a while, but obviously winning the truck championship and then obviously Stadium Super Truck, so on and so forth. But for him to go out of his way to say, I want to thank the Richard Childress guys and the Joe Gibbs Racing guys for being able to give me this opportunity too. And then obviously Haas Factory team. I mean, Sheldon Creed's been with 4 different manufacturers in 4 years on 3 teams. So for him to go get it done after 15 runner-up finishes, felt a lot like Daniel Hemrick. Daniel Hemrick did that, won a race and a championship. So for Sheldon Creed, bro, it's up to you. I think a lot of people give Sam Mayer the credit as maybe being the better driver. But that can show too. I can't really say equipment. I know the junior motorsports equipment was great a few years ago too, where Sam Mayer was winning a bunch of races. But now they're in the same equipment, so one of those guys is probably a favorite in some way, shape, or form. But Mr. Sheldon Creed, it is your time to go out there, and I guess I can't say pull the Daniel Hemrick, but everyone underestimated you, and you went out and did it. So now that unlocks that dam. Hopefully you could go through and continue to do great things. Yeah, so that's my one shot moment. Obviously, so many other great ones too, especially Mayhew getting his first win at 15 years old and then making his ARCA West debut literally a week later.
Rajah Caruth's great run in Atlanta with a new race team, both, very impressive. With that said, we'll be moving on to our final and very abbreviated segment, and we're going to call this, going forward, the Grid Wow Award. And it stands for Weapon of the Week. So this is the driver that has caused the most mayhem or destruction within a race weekend, and unfortunately it's more of shining a dim light on them, but it's not to shame them, it's just what it was. Sometimes you get in a car and you cause a lot of crashes. Like, it is what it is. This week, it's going to Corey Day of Hendrick Motorsports from his Xfinity Series race, or Reilly Series race. Dang, I almost made it all the way through this time. Caused at least 2 different cautions and just generally did not make people feel very comfortable on the racetrack being around him. So hopefully he can go into Dakota with a little bit more of a cleaner nose and come out with a few more friends in the field than he did this past weekend. What about you, Matthew? Who's your weapon of the week?
I mean, gosh, it was great. We made an hour and 27 before we just said Xfinity, so we're pretty good. Maybe next time. I think it's the purple. We are looking at the purple too much in the logo and everything. You're sure we got it. But I can't disagree with you. I think Corey Day, obviously, we put him down a lot, said a lot of things, but we also put him up a lot, says he got a lot of raw talent. But, yeah, he hit a lot of things, track, cars, wall, not the pace car, but, yeah, Corey Day. Yeah, I would say overall throughout the series, because Super2 there wasn't really a lot. Car Store West, I feel like everyone hit everyone, so it kind of reminds me of the actual car store. If you're a car store late model stock driver, expect there to go out, whether you win the biggest event, you're going to go out there at a net loss because you're going to get hit and you're going to hit people and there's going to be a lot of damage. I don't know how they make money in the car store. I really do not. So there's a lot of chaos there too. But yeah, Corey Day, probably the first time in the second episode, WOW moment, weapon of the week. But yeah, Tanner, if you don't have anything else, I'll take it from here if we're good. Once again, guys, we talked a lot. So I'm going to pull it up right here. Our Patreon investors, we want to give you guys a thank you. Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and Nico is our newest investor. If anyone watching live right now wants to join the Patreon or even buy us a coffee, obviously so many. Thank you, Jason. A few of those in the past week. We will have him. Really appreciate that. It doesn't hurt us if you guys want to invest a little bit into this program, help us be at more live events, so on and so forth. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to that. And then our social media channels, obviously, we got this. I'll pop this up. QR code. I won't give you enough time to scan it, but my NASCAR Cup Series recap is up there. I do that for gridnetworktv.com. But the more important stuff, our social media channels, Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and X-Twitter. Follow us there, pretty please. We're trying to post more and more content, as you will see, and we couldn't do it without you guys, so we really appreciate it. And make sure coming up to Grid tonight, they're going to be talking about many things. One of those things we had just mentioned about Chris Gayheart, and then Joe Gibbs Racing, and then so many other things happening in the news with motorsport. Make sure Kobe, Matt, and Josh will be live on air on Wednesday. And for you guys, Grid Rising episode 2, I just want to remind everyone, I like to say this quote, don't be afraid to do something great. And thank you guys for tuning in to episode 2. We really appreciate it. And we will see you guys next time. Peace out.